Hey, what's up you guys, it's Connor, and today I'm going to be continuing my 2016 reading wrap-up with books 111 through 115. If you haven't checked out any of the other parts, there's a huge playlist that has all of them on there, so if you really want to, you could just start at the first one and watch all the way through. But you guys know how this works, so let's just get started. The 111th book that I read is Keeper of Velocities by Shannon Messenger. This book follows a young girl named Sophie, and she is able to read everyone around her's minds, so she can hear all of their thoughts whenever they're thinking them, and so she ends up having a lot of headaches and stuff like that. It all changes one day when she's at a museum and she meets a boy who can also read minds and that she cannot read his mind. Adventure ensues and she finds out that she is not human, she is actually an elf, and that's not a spoiler because it happens in like the first 20 pages. And then she must go into this elf society and figure out where she belongs within this society. This is one of those books that has a magic school, and so you get a lot of different lessons and learn a little bit about the magic system as you go along with the main problem that is happening. She finds out that not everyone is exactly happy that she has been found and has been brought back into the elven society, and so she is trying to test the waters and see and figure out what the heck happened and why she was in the human world and why she's a little bit different than everyone else. One of those finding yourself middle grade stories. I ended up liking this book. I gave it 3.5 stars. I liked the different elves, I liked their different abilities, I liked the magic school. I thought there were some pretty funny moments as well, and I actually started caring for the different characters, and not even just the main characters, the side characters as well. Things I didn't like, however. Sophie has been raised in the human world for the first however many years of her life. I think it's 12. And one afternoon, she just completely abandons her whole life. Like, someone telling her something makes her not feel attached to her family. It was a very quick succession of events where she went from, you know, she's can read her family's mind, so she's a little bit of an outsider within her own family, but they're still her family, and then she's like, oh my gosh, they're not my family at all. And I just thought it was really weird that the main character abandoned her family so easily. Sophie describes her family as chubby brunettes and describes herself as the thin blonde girl. So like, it was a little bit weird, and I felt like she was a huge brat, and I didn't like that about her. Another problem I had was that in the elf society, there are goblins that live alongside of them, but the goblins are kind of like servants, and the elves are almost always white. There's a couple ones that have darker skin, like maybe tan skin, but they were pretty much all white, and then the goblins had brown skin, and they were in charge of farming and household chores and security, and it just felt icky to me. They're intelligent beings. They're just as smart as humans. So it was very strange that that whole situation was happening. The next book I read is Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. Now I know Orson Scott Card is not the best of humans in terms of how he decides to spend his money. He's very anti-LGBTQ plus rights, but I still wanted to read this book anyway because it's a big staple within science fiction. If you guys don't know, it follows a little boy who has been tested throughout his childhood to see if he is able to join into this military space battle school. He ends up being chosen, and so it follows his journey going to this school and living at this school and training and trying to become the best person to save humanity. It also follows his two siblings that were not selected for this program, and it just follows all three of them for, I think, 12 years. I ended up really enjoying this book. I gave it 4.5 stars. There was just a couple of things that I didn't care about as much. There's just a couple things that were not my favorite ever, but what's weird is that a lot of people love Ender's Game for Ender, but I loved Ender's Game for his siblings. I thought they were so interesting. I loved reading about them because they both are flawed in their own ways, and so is Ender to a point. But Ender is kind of considered the perfect one. He is the mixture of his two siblings, and I found his two siblings to be way more fascinating. I think what ended up taking away a 0.5 stars is that it just felt very cold, which is on purpose. Like, the adults in Ender's life are very cruel to him, and so I didn't love that, but everything else I absolutely loved. I read this book pretty quickly. I recommend it, but I recommend getting it from a different source than buying it new, because then he doesn't get as much money. I then read My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry by Fredrik Backman. I did a full review on this book. It's non-spoiler, so you don't have to worry about that, but I absolutely love this book. I gave it 5 stars, and I hope you will check out my review because I did a really good job on that one. Pat my own back, but I really did enjoy that review. I did get this book in exchange for an honest review through BookTube Tours, who's run by Grace from Love and Them Books, so I'll be sure to leave all the links down in the description. Definitely enter the giveaway because this book is so good. This is like a literary fiction book, but it would appeal to a lot of people that love fantasy because it has a lot of fantasy and science fiction references. It references Harry Potter constantly throughout the whole book, and there is this alternate fantasy world that's in here. That is the grandmother's stories to Elsa, the little girl. So I think that this book, even though it isn't technically fantasy, would really appeal to people that are wanting to get into more contemporary or literary fiction work, but are scared that they have been reading fantasy for so long that they won't like it. Check out my review. It'll be linked in the card symbol and down below. I then read Spirit Walker by Michelle Paver. This is the second book in the Chronicles of Ancient Darkness series. In the first book, you follow a boy named Torak, who is orphaned at the beginning of the book because his father is killed by a bear. He finds out that he can communicate with a wolf pup, and then he goes on a journey to try to save all of the native people within the area that he lives. It's set 6,000 years in the past, and it also has a little bit of magic, and so I really enjoyed the first book. I gave the first book 5 stars. This one for me was a little bit less exciting. I didn't like the plot as much, and I found that the new characters that were introduced, I didn't care about them hardly at all. So I ended up giving this book 4 stars, or 3.75 stars. It was a step down from the first book for me, but I am pretty excited to see where the story will go in the future because I felt like this book was a setup for the rest of the series. So I think that I'll like the rest of the series a little bit more than this book, hopefully just as much as that first one. And the 115th thing that I read this year is Fortunately the Milk by Neil Gaiman. Sorry, the cover is really, really shiny. This follows the story of a man who is left at home with his 2 children by his wife, and the 3 of them end up running out of milk, and so the dad decides that he's gonna run to the corner store and go get milk. However, it takes him forever long to get back, and he has had a major adventure. This book is so much fun. It's just goofy and quirky, and it's a children's book. Like, the words are very, very large, as you can see, and it's also illustrated, which is super fun, and I love Chris Riddell's illustrations. It's the person that did the UK version, so I highly recommend getting the UK version. I haven't seen the US version illustrations, however, but I just love Chris Riddell's pictures so much. So yeah, I ended up giving this book 4 stars. It is just so much fun. I definitely think that kids would really enjoy this book, especially for the different pictures, and I thought it was actually pretty interesting because the dad looks a lot like Neil Gaiman, so that's also a thing. One thing that I thought was really, really cool was that in the middle of the book, I'm not gonna flip it open, but there's a big poster that comes out, so that was awesome. I did not expect that at all. I definitely recommend this one. So those are the next 5 things that I read in 2016. Let me know what you've been reading recently. What's your favorite Neil Gaiman book? I would love to know. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.